In this video, we're going to learn how to sharpen. Sharpening is different than honing or stropping, which are other terms you might have heard. Here's the definitions of those terms. We're going to be using ceramic stones and diamond stones in order to sharpen a kitchen knife in this video, but you can use this process for chisels or plain irons as well. All ceramic stones should be soaked. Sometimes there are things called oil stones, so you need to be careful and know what you're looking at. But in this case, this is a water stone. We're going to soak it. You can see the air bubbles escaping. Next, we're going to look at some different types of knives. One of the most common types that you'll see in kitchens are these style, and these are really not meant to be sharpened. They're more for tearing. This style is called a bread knife or a serrated knife. It is basically only sharpened on one side. This red-handled knife is called a santuco, and this one will be sharpened on both sides. And then here's some chisels just to show you that you could also use this for sharpening chisels. Here's a hand plane, same thing. That plain iron could come out, and you could use the same process to sharpen that plain iron. This is the flat side of the serrated blade and the beveled side. So you can see this side actually has, this is the side that you would sharpen. So single or double, we're going to be doing a double bevel in this case, but you could do a single bevel. A single bevel would be an example of a single bevel would be this chisel. So this is a big one just so you can see what's going on. The bottom here in this case is flat. And if we flip it over, you can see this side you would never put an angle on. And then this side is the beveled side. So right here, this is the bevel that you would actually be sharpening. Some quick rules. The most important one being that the blade has to be held at a constant angle. If it's not, you'll be creating a round surface as opposed to a flat one. So for this case, I'm going to be using a 325 grit diamond stone as the first step. You can see I'm getting it pretty wet. This one does not have to be soaked because it's not porous like a stone. I've got a blade guide on this blade. This is not necessary, but it helps to kind of get yourself oriented. And once you get comfortable with it, you could remove that and you could do the same thing as long as you're holding that blade at a constant angle. You can see I'm pushing and sliding the blade across because obviously the stone isn't big enough to get the entire blade at the same time. Nice even pressure, counting the number of passes, and then I'm going to move on to the other side. Switching directions, a little bit harder for you to see, but basically just doing exactly the same thing I was doing before, pushing the blade and pulling across the stone. The rounded tip on a knife is a little bit more difficult to get to, and it takes some practice to keep that angle consistent. But that is probably the most challenging part of sharpening a knife. If the blade was perfectly straight, it'd be easy. Okay, step 2, I'm switching to a 550 grit diamond stone and just doing the same thing, basically counting the number of passes, doing both sides the same amount, so I end up with a nice symmetrical blade. The angle, if I had to guess, this is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 15, 17 degrees, which is pretty standard for a kitchen knife. If I was doing a chisel, I'd want to be 25 degrees, 30 degrees, somewhere in there, depending on what the chisel is used for. There are times when you would want like a shallower angle than that, but for the most part, most knives are going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 degrees on each side. So let's see. All right, last couple passes on this side. You can see my stones kind of sliding around. It would be a good idea to secure that. Obviously, it would make it easier and you could end up being more consistent. Last step here is my ceramic stone. You can see it's soaked already and so super wet. This one's a 2000 grit, and so it's not going to be removing much material. This is going to be more polishing and making a finer edge. You could keep going even higher than this. You can, get up to 6,000, 10,000 grit if you really wanted something super, super sharp. In this case, my knives tend to get kind of beat up because I've got kids, so they get thrown in the sink or in the dishwasher or whatever. And so spending a bunch of time getting it up to 10,000 probably isn't worth it. Okay, now it's time for a little test to make sure we got it nice and sharp. Just a cardboard box here. On the very leading edge, you can see how the color is different. Got a nice, consistent, shiny edge. There's a couple of nicks in this blade, like I said, from kitchen, but cuts pretty good.